again, good morning and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We're really excited to have you here for this call for proposals webinar. And we hope this session will provide you with more information that you need, whether you're interested in submitting a proposal or sharing this opportunity with others. So next slide, please. So before we dive in, I would just like to go over the agenda for today's session. So we will start off with an opening welcome and prayer from Cook P. Harvey McLeod from the Upper Nicola Band. We will also be introducing the Building Climate Resilience from Indigenous Perspectives Project, including the team behind it, the objectives, and what it's about. The third will be our focus for this webinar, which is our call for proposals. So it includes eligibility, key information that you need to know, what these partnership projects are all about, and the process on how to apply. And then we'll end off with our Q&A. So we ask if questions come up during the webinar, please write them during the chat, and we will also get to them later at the end of the webinar. And also just a note that we would like to record today's webinar just for people that aren't able to attend the session. We will be publishing this later on to share. If you have any concerns about that, please express it in the chat privately to me. But otherwise, we will be recording now. And I'd like to hand it over to Cook P. Harvey McLeod to start us off. P. Harvey for the opening prayer. Now I'd like to pass it on to Patricia Rojas. She is our Regional Climate Coordinator and Policy Analyst for the BCAFN.
Thank you, Alina. Good morning, everyone. My name is Patricia Rojas, and I work as a Policy Analyst and Regional Climate Change Coordinator at the BC Assembly of First Nations since 2019. Thank you so much, Kupi Harvey, for your words, your wisdom, the prayer. It's always good to start those meetings in a good way. And I am honored to join this morning from the unceded territory of Williams Lake First Nation, where I live and I have the privilege of living and working. I am originally from Peru, from Cajamarca, a region located in the north of the Andes, which is part of the Quechua Nation. And working with Alina and my colleague Christy, she's not here today, but we are co-leading the implementation of the BCRIP project at BCFN. And I will begin today's presentation by providing some background information on the Building Climate Resilience from Indigenous Perspectives Project and the BCRIP project, as we commonly refer to. So next slide, please. So the BCRIP project is a journey that BCFN started in 2022 to respond to the mandate we received from Chiefs in Assembly at the 17th Special Chiefs meeting in 2021. There was a resolution 05/2021 that passed at that time. Basically, the resolution mandated the regional chief TG to support First Nations-led climate initiatives and to pursue international advocacy opportunities regarding climate change, indigenous rights, and sovereignty at multiple scales, including the United Nations, and also building relationships for joint action and advocacy between First Nations in BC and Indigenous people abroad. So this is something that the chiefs discuss and say that is that joint advocacy, joint work, collaborative joy with Indigenous people outside Canada, it's needed in this time where climate change is an emergency for everyone. It's a global emergency. So in 2022, Global Affairs Canada launched the Indigenous People Partnership for Climate Funding Opportunity, and BCFN found this opportunity as a means to fulfill our mandate to support First Nations in BC in building partnerships with Indigenous people abroad. And we started looking for partners to prepare a proposal for this call. So next slide, please. So the BCRIP project is a partnership between BCFN, the Continental Network of Indigenous Women of the Americas, ETMIASUR, through the National Organization of Andean and Amazonian Indigenous Women in Peru, ONAMIAP, and also Save the Children. So Save the Children, Canada, and BCFN are the co-signatories for the BCRIP project. We both submitted a proposal with the support of ONAMIAP. And Save the Children is a non-profit organization that works to ensure children survive, children are protected from harm, can learn and thrive. And they have a national reconciliation program that started in 2017. And this is a domestic Indigenous and child rights program that supports Indigenous-led Indigenous-led initiatives. So through this program, Save the Children engage in the BCRIP project. And also Save the Children has different branches, and Save the Children Latin America and the Caribbean, they all together provide admin and compliance support to the BCRIP project. So our other partner, ETMIASUR and ONAMIAP, ETMIASUR is a network of Indigenous women organizations that for over 20 years has been promoting the exercise and empowerment of individuals and collective Indigenous rights, particularly the rights of Indigenous women, youth, and children. And ONAMIAP is a member of ETMIASUR and is a national network of Andean and Amazonian Indigenous women who fight to their rights as women and Indigenous people. They work in Peru to strengthen their grassroots organizations, empower youth, reveal ancestral knowledge, and influence public policies as well. ONAMIAP and BCFN, we have the role of ensuring that the BCRIP project supports Indigenous people directly without intermediaries. My colleagues Jasmine and Anna and Andrea and Mayra, they are all here with us today from Save the Children and also from ONAMIAP. And thank you for being here. So I will pass over my colleague Jasmine now, that she will continue the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon across the time zones. My name is Yasemin. I am a part of the National Reconciliation Program team at Save the Children Canada, currently joining you from Treaty 13 Territory, Toronto. As mentioned, if we could move on to the next slide, please. As mentioned, BCRIP is the acronym we'll use. Building Climate Resilience from Indigenous Perspectives Project is an Indigenous-led project. It is a 4-year-long Indigenous-led project funded by Global Affairs Canada, specifically as a part of the Indigenous Peoples Partnering for Climate portfolio. Within these 4 years, 2 of those years are allocated to the implementation, maximum of 2 years is allocated to the implementation of the partnership projects, which we'll talk a bit more about in upcoming slides. The project is focused on building climate resilience and supporting self-determined Indigenous-led nature-based solutions projects and climate leadership. The Indigenous-led nature-based solutions are to be implemented in the South, again, some of which we'll talk about in a couple slides. And this project aims to challenge the normalized neo-colonial Eurocentric international development narratives that exist within the sector by uplifting Indigenous knowledge systems and sciences, by shifting power, by having this project be more Indigenous-led as well. And within the BCRIP project, a core component is the implementation of the partnership projects that are co-designed and co-implemented by Indigenous peoples in Canada in partnership with Indigenous peoples in the 4 Latin American countries that are Bolivia, Colombia, Peru, and Guatemala. We do have a couple of cross-cutting key themes in addition to the climate resilience theme, which we'll dive into in a bit, but those cross-cutting themes are Indigenous self-determination, rights, knowledge systems, science, and gender equality. If you can move on to the next slide, please. The project has the objective of building climate resiliency and supporting Indigenous-led climate action through a couple of key components that are really central to the partnership projects, especially here in Canada for the partners who are the Indigenous partners who are going to be applying from the north. So those components are joint advocacy, strengthened climate governance, relationship building, knowledge sharing, all between the Indigenous peoples in Canada and Indigenous peoples in selected 4 countries in Latin America. The project also has the objective to support and to provide funding, as Patricia mentioned, for self-determined nature-based solution partnership projects, collaboratively designed by Indigenous partners in Canada and in Latin America. But as mentioned, the nature-based solution implementation is going to be the partner in Latin America. Next slide, please. There are a couple of key parameters also to expand on the objectives and how the project has been designed. So the project parameters span Indigenous self-determination and climate leadership, capacity bridging, co-learning, knowledge sharing, especially when it comes to those joint aspects, locally driven climate adaptation priorities. So really looking at what the priorities are of those Indigenous co-leads of the partnership projects, and respect for Indigenous peoples' knowledge systems. A bit more key information, some of which may not be as relevant for the partnership projects, but for transparency purposes and more about the project at large. There's a budget of 12.5 million Canadian. Over 7 million is going directly to funding the partnership projects. And the geographical span of these partnership projects, as mentioned, is Peru, Colombia, Bolivia, Guatemala, and Canada. Next slide, please. You can learn more about the project in our web pages. So Patricia included the BCFN webpage. There's also the Save the Children webpage. It's both in English and Spanish. There's Save the Children International's webpage too. The project is guided by 2 Indigenous governance bodies. So we have the Indigenous Steering Group, who has been operational for several weeks to a couple months now. And we have the Indigenous Wisdom and Knowledge Circle, who's currently coming together and being selected. So these governance bodies provide us with the guidance and direction as the core project teams and make sure that the project is implemented in a good way, is implemented with the values in mind, considers the diverse perspectives of the different Indigenous peoples across the countries in which the project is being implemented as well. And these 2 Indigenous governance bodies are also key components or key aspects to the selection of the partnership project. So they will have a key role in evaluating and selecting the partnership project proposals. Next slide, please. So with that, I'll pass it back to my colleague, Patricia.
Thanks, Jasmine. So I will continue presenting the BCRIP project logic model. And the table on the screen displays the logic model as presented in the application guide. It's in the application guide on page 13, and this logic model outlines how the project is expected to achieve its goal, and it shows the relationship between outcomes, outputs, and activities. Next slide, please. Logic models sometimes can be complex, especially for this project that we have like different partners in different in the north and the south with different languages. So to illustrate those outcomes, I created this slide that trying to be a little bit more friendly. So the logic model table is presented in the circles, and the immediate outcome are in the yellow circles, and the red circle contains the ultimate outcome, which is kind of the ultimate purpose of this project. And this kind of purpose is to improve the climate resilience of Indigenous people in Peru, Bolivia, Colombia, and Guatemala. And that's kind of the goal that Jasmine just presented. But how will this outcome be achieved? And the proposal outlines like we will achieve this ultimate outcome by working on 3 components. One is increasing the adoption of Indigenous-led, self-determined, gender-inclusive biodiversity positive nature-based solutions. And that's the number 11, 1,100. That's 11K. And the other is strengthening governance systems of Indigenous people, Indigenous organizations, and or Indigenous networks. And that's the 12K. And the other is increasing of creating joint action and knowledge sharing opportunities between Indigenous people in the 4 countries involved in the project and Indigenous people in Canada. So the third one is the 13. That's the one it's more connected to the work that we will have between Canada and BC and Indigenous people in the South. So the joint project proposal that you may want to prepare must incorporate goals and activities within these 3 components. So one is nature-based solutions, the other is Indigenous governance systems and strengthen those systems, and the other is joint action, knowledge sharing, and building relationships, which is almost the third one. And the ultimate goal is increasing the climate resilience of Indigenous people to effectively address the challenges of the human-made climate change. So next slide, please. So the project has cross-cutting themes, which are very important, and they are kind of overarching priorities. They should be considering the proposal in all the activities that you may want to have. So those cross-cutting themes are gender equality, Indigenous rights and self-determination, Indigenous climate leadership, and Indigenous perspectives on climate adaptation. With respect to gender equality, which is one of the main components, the project seeks to improve gender equality by protecting and advancing the individual and collective rights of women, youth, and individuals to LGBTQIA+ people. And this includes ensuring their active and meaningful participation in decision-making around climate governance, climate action and adaptation, as well as their access to and control over the land, water, and their ancestral territories. So it's kind of bringing women into those spaces of decision-making and leadership. And Indigenous self-determination, this is an essential component of the BCRIP project, and project proposals must support and promote the respect and the integration of Indigenous self-determination in climate actions. And the BCRIP project in this sense emphasized that Indigenous people have the right to make decisions about their own lives, their communities, their nations, about environmental territories and natural resources management, and particularly regarding how Indigenous people respond to and manage the impacts of climate change. So it's left to the communities and Indigenous people themselves the way how they want to address climate change. Next slide, please. And Indigenous climate leadership recognizes and supports locally driven climate priorities and perspective of Indigenous people in Canada, BC, and the 2 countries in the South, and recognize that there are linkages between all of them. An Indigenous perspective on climate adaptation integrates and understands Indigenous people knowledge systems and perspectives of the environment and climate change, nature-based solutions, and self-determined climate adaptation strategies. Next slide, please. So nature-based solutions from an Indigenous perspective recognize that Indigenous people worldwide have been practicing the so-called nature-based solutions for time immemorial and grounded in the deep relationship of Indigenous people with the land, the waters, and the spiritual world. In this sense, the BCRIP project refers to nature-based solutions from an Indigenous perspective to Indigenous-led approaches to climate solutions grounded in this traditional or Indigenous ecological knowledge. And those principles, practices, ways of living, and ways of doing science, as well as the right of self-determination, authority, and jurisdiction. and nature-based solutions from an Indigenous perspective, and that's additions that can or we won't find in Western Indigenous-based solutions definitions, is that nature-based solutions includes the promotion and revitalization of cultural, spiritual and legal principles, also knowledge systems and traditional languages. So next slide, please. So the partnership projects, the BCRIP project will provide funding support to an amount of 8 to 12 projects. Those projects will be co-designed and co-implemented by the Indigenous partners from Bolivia, Colombia, Peru, and Guatemala, and Indigenous people in Canada, specifically First Nations in BC, Inuit, and Métis people. The nature-based solutions activities will be implemented in the South, and this needs to be very clear that the project is funding nature-based solutions from an Indigenous perspective in the South, and in the North, the knowledge sharing, the relationship building, the joint advocacy, the strengthened climate governance will be the activities that will be co-designed and co-implemented in partnership. So the nature-based solutions will be implemented in the South, and the knowledge sharing aspect will be in the North and the South. Next slide, please. So what are the benefits for First Nations in BC from this call? Next slide, please. Why should First Nations engage in this BCRIP project and prepare a project proposal? So this slide presents some of the benefits that we identified, and there may be many others that when developing the proposal, you may also identify. So some of those benefits are knowledge sharing and capacity building, and the BCRIP project offer opportunities to exchange expertise and deepen understanding of diverse Indigenous-led climate adaptation strategies in different parts in the 4 countries and also in BC. And learning from the rich diversity of Indigenous knowledge systems from outside Canada, from outside BC, to foster local and global initiatives. And of course, empower Indigenous people, particularly women, girls, and youth, as part of the project. Also, the project will support building strong Indigenous relationships, and this will help foster meaningful long-term relationships with Indigenous leaders outside Canada, again, including women and youth, and collaborate on strategic advocacy for climate solutions and promote the recognition of Indigenous inherent rights, and support activities that emphasize that the importance of Indigenous worldviews, ways of life, and knowledge system respond and address climate change and enhance the resiliency of Indigenous people. So opportunities also are coming through access to funding, and the project will secure financial support up to 207,000 to achieve your goals and strengthen community capacity for climate advocacy and action. So this amount will be allocated for each one of the projects in the North, and also bring opportunities for international traveling to visit, for example, the project partners in Bolivia, Colombia, Guatemala, and Peru, to learn from their experiences. And also, it's possible the funding could cover if you want to attend any international events, to engage in global discussions and engage with your partner in the South. So if you want to attend COP, for example, the funding can also support that action. And also building local capacity, and this is engaging in knowledge sharing activities, including those dialogue spaces, workshops, or events that may be created as part of the partnership, will also support building capacity in your community and sharing insights within your nation with partners in the South and also globally. And of course, hosting the partners from the South to come here to BC and to share their experience with First Nations and also with the community members. And And as I said, there will be probably many other opportunities that you may identify when preparing the proposal. So next slide, please. And I will pass over Alina, and she will address the coming slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. And yeah, hi everyone. My name is Alina de Guzman. I'm a junior climate change policy analyst for the BCAFN, working closely in this project. And with gratitude, I live and work on Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh territory. Next slide, please. We are going to now discuss the call for proposals. And one thing that we would like to announce is we have extended the deadline. As most of you might know, the original deadline was April 20th, but out of recognition of wanting to give people more time to prepare and also discuss their proposal, we have extended it to now May 30th, 2025, in the hopes that this gives people more time. This project is going to fund 8 to 12 partnership projects ranging from a year to 2 years. As this is a proposal that needs to be co-created with Indigenous peoples in one of the 4 countries, the applications can be submitted in either English or Spanish. And the way that it will work is that applications received before the deadline will be considered first. However, proposals received after the deadline will be considered if funds are still available. We will announce once all of the funds have been allocated. Next slide, please. So now eligible groups. So this is the eligibility criteria for this particular proposal. So for BC, the eligibility criteria is First Nations in British Columbia or an Indigenous organization that is owned or controlled by First Nations in BC. Organizations must receive their mandates from First Nations in BC or have their governance members, such as board members, be appointed by First Nations in BC. Other groups are also a Métis or Inuit organization in Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Quebec, Yukon, the Northwest Territories, or none of it. And the other group in the South will be an Indigenous nation or an Indigenous-led organization in Bolivia, Colombia, Guatemala, or Peru, with the effective participation of Indigenous women in its governance. That is the preferred group. Next slide, please. Furthermore, the eligibility criteria requires a registered entity or organization or nation under a fiscal sponsor. The group also must have a bank account registered to their organization, nation, or entity. This group must be able to demonstrate experience in financial management, controls, fiduciary oversight, and project management, whether it's the organization that is applying directly or your fiscal sponsor. And just a note as well that this project design does not make financial investments or pay for activities that may result in reflows or may increase the value of the organization. Next slide, please. So the steps to the application, we have 6 steps. So we advise people who are interested in this call for proposals to take a self-assessment test. There's one for the North and one for the South to determine whether you meet the main eligibility criteria. If you fill out this form and you are considered eligible, it will lead you to another Google form where you get to express a little bit more about yourself, your organization, the themes that you want to work on. That is part 2. And it is really essential to fill out this form as it will evaluate key topics for nature-based solutions projects and also help us make those partnerships and connect you to people in the South. The third step is, once you complete both forms and your information aligns with the project's objectives, you will receive an invitation to participate in our matchmaking process. There will be a webinar likely at the end of April that will begin this process. The fourth step is once the pairing has been finalized, you can begin designing the joint activities for the proposal. Only one of the partners should submit the proposal, again, either in English or Spanish. And the deadline will be on May 30th at 8:59 Pacific time. The fifth step is that our governance bodies, the Indigenous Wisdom and Knowledge Circle and the Indigenous Steering Group, will be assessing the proposals. And The last step is that in June, we will be making a decision. The BCRIP team will reach out to partners whose proposals have been selected for the next steps. You will be notified in early July if your proposal has been accepted, and selected teams will maintain consistent communication with BCRIP to have projects start between July and August 2025. And regarding the funds, they will be transferred approximately 2 weeks after the agreements have been received and approved. Next slide, please. So the matching process. So this is very integral to the project. It is required between the groups in the north and the groups in the south. So following the pre-selection, the matching process will take place. Applicants who do not have an identified partner will receive an invitation to begin the matching process. To facilitate the matching, as we mentioned, we will host a webinar at the end of April, to which you will get an invitation. Once you have secured a partner, you can develop the joint activities. And you submit the proposal to the email below. Again, only one of the partners has to do it before May 30th. And now, next slide, please. I will pass it on to my colleague, Yasmin.
Thank you very much, Alina. Just a quick note for the matching. If you do have a partner already identified, it is really, really, as Alina mentioned, integral that they submit the Google form to assess their eligibility. And for the South, there is a concept note that needs to be submitted and by end of today, actually, to be considered as eligible. So if you are working, if you have a partner identified already from the South, please do ensure that they have submitted that Google form, and if they're eligible, have submitted that really short concept note to assess their eligibility and to be considered. So translation funds, rather interpretation. One of the challenges potentially within this project that we also have to navigate is interpretation and language barriers. If you are multilingual, then that is amazing, and I applaud you. If you are not, then that's okay. We do have funding available to support with interpretation needs that groups might have. So we have an amazing interpreter that we work with. She's bilingual both in English and Spanish, and familiar with Indigenous rights as well as climate solutions and the project's context. So if you find yourselves in a position whereby you need some interpretation supports, you can apply for approximately up to 10 hours for a set number of groups we have available. If we have more available and you need more, don't hesitate to reach out. But we ask that you email us at bcrep.ipp4c@outlook.com, indicating the number of interpretation hours that you need. If you have an idea of who you're going to be using this with, then we do recommend specifying. So as X organization, we're going to be using X amount of interpretation for proposal development, relationship building, whatever it might look like, with Y partner. So including how you plan to use the hours. If you find yourselves needing more hours, then feel free to reach out to us. Once we receive your request and give the go-ahead, then we'll put you in touch with the interpreter. And then from then on, you'll have direct communication with the interpreter to organize and coordinate your interpretation needs, such as when you're having a meeting, when what time and what works. And then once the interpretation is completed, the interpreter will invoice us directly, so we'll make the payment. And yes, so that is what we have for interpretation supports. Next slide, please. And I do see a couple of questions rolling in. We'll address quick ones as we can in the comments, but we'll also have a good portion of time for Q&A, so we will get to those questions at the end.
All right, and yeah, we are going to discuss the selection process, so just to provide more transparency on how we are going to select projects. So again, we do a pre-screening to ensure that interested groups meet the minimum eligibility criteria, as we highlighted before. The Indigenous Wisdom and Knowledge Circle and the Indigenous Steering Group will be revising and selecting the groups. And the way we evaluate it is, first of all, whether your themes and goals align with one of the interested groups in the South. So this way we can determine who to best match you with and whether your interests do align with one of the projects that are being proposed in the South. The second one is relevance and impact to the project's goals. The team and the environment the capacity and technical expertise, and also the timeline and the budget. So once all of those components are evaluated, the decision will be made in June, and you will be notified late June or early July, and they will start, the projects will start by then. And now I'm going to pass it on to my colleague Andrea to talk a little bit more about the narrative template.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andrea. I'm part of the... Oh, is it?
Oh, sorry. Next slide, please.
Next slide, please. Next. Well, I'm part of Save the Children and one of the project allies, and I'm going to give you a brief summary of the narrative template. Next slide, please. This is a key document in the joint proposal. It's a collaborative work between the North and the South partner. After the whole matchmaking process, your organization, nation, group, or band should have found a South partner. The next step is to start the joint proposal, which begins with a narrative template. This template covers essential aspects of the project, including organizational details, previous experience, the executive summary and the partnerships, the project objectives, the gender equality and monitoring plans, the work plan, the budget, among other topics. This document, the template, it's available online. It has 10 pages outlining precise instructions on what to include. And additionally, it's crucial to use the application guide, which can also be found online. Both documents are attached to this PowerPoint that was sent through the chat on this Zoom. The most important aspect is ensuring that throughout this narrative template, your joint proposal demonstrates how the nature-based solution will enhance climate resilience in the South, how the North will experience increased climate resilience and environmental integrity through joint action, and how the project will contribute to the Indigenous-led climate adaptation with a strong emphasis on women. Thank you, and I will pass it to Patricia.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrea. And now we, can you please go to the next slide? We are going to talk about the areas of focus of this project. So to considering your proposal and based on the cross-cutting themes that the project proposal should have, the project proposal should have addressed a few areas. So those are climate adaptation and nature-based solutions, which will be implemented in the South, Indigenous rights, knowledge sharing, capacity building, and strengthening climate governance that will be implemented in the North and in the South, and the gender equality component. Next slide, please. So in this slide, you can see that is the part of the logic model, and that's intermediate outcomes. And this slide kind of show where the activities for the North will be placed. So for example, in the outcomes 11, we have access to knowledge sharing mechanisms for Indigenous and non-Indigenous knowledge improved. So this means that one of the activities that you may have can also be connected to the how Indigenous knowledge are working with non-Indigenous knowledge to address climate change and undertake nature-based solution projects. And in the number 13, as you can see, this is a component that has more activities for the North and the South, and in this case for BC, and those are connected to the joint advocacy goals for the realization of Indigenous rights for climate adaptation, and also the partnerships with and between the North-South. So when you see the application guide, you will go through the logic model and you will find those spaces where the activities for the North will be placed. In the intermediate outcome 1200, those in this, we can also include some activities. That's what I said, we need to be kind of a little bit innovative. because we can, the idea with this outcome is to strengthen the governance institutions, all the capacity building within the organizations, or in this case, the nation. So the way how you usually work in your nation, those are also activities that can be shared with the South. Next slide, please. So those are kind of some of the examples that we wanted to bring just to give you an idea what the kind of activities you may have. So in research, you can research about adaptation funding opportunities, and that's actually one of the actions that we are planning to do as part of the BCRIP project team. That means the overarching project. And some of the actions we want to do as BCFN is kind of providing some information about funding opportunities for First Nations in BC to undertake a nature-based solution project. And I think that's related to the question that Stephen said in the chat, like we need more nature-based solutions from BC as well, not just from the South. And just to respond to this question, this call is coming from international development, and for the commitment from Canada to support climate change and adapting to climate change in developing countries. So because this funding is coming from this streamlined and through Global Efforts Canada, that's why the nature-based solutions projects will be funded in the South. It's not excluding First Nations or Indigenous people in Canada. It's just like there are other streams that we need to work on, we need to advocate for to be improved in the North, and coming also from the federal and the provincial government. So this specific project is to support Indigenous people in the South adaptation to climate change. So the research can be also part of advocacy opportunities and mechanisms at various levels. So, for example, there are nations that are already working on international advocacy, being part of the United Nations framework for climate change, like, for example, attending COPs or attending those international events where Indigenous rights are the focus of the meeting. So if you can also research about that and bring to the partner in the South. So there may be other areas of research. In dialogues, like the project will fund hosting different spaces and venues where you can get together with a partner in the South, and that means conducting circles or participatory mapping around nature-based solutions. Interviews also, it can be part of that, like sharing circles. Also bringing those topics of gender equality, impacts on climate change, nature-based solutions. Like we know, like in BC, we have many nations working already on nature-based solution projects. So, creating the spaces for sharing those with the South, those experiences with the South, that's also part of this project. Also, tool making, develop tools and resources such as video, short films for knowledge sharing and advocacy. That's also options. Like if you want to have or create a video on the nature-based solutions, the project that you are working on, this the proposal can also include those type of activities, and also developing training materials based on priority areas for capacity development, and that this can be also in partnership with partners from the South. So those are some examples, and participatory international participation and advocacy, that this is kind of, I mentioned before, like being part of the COPs or other climate events, but also traveling to the South and visit your partner. That's also activities that this project will cover. And hosting the nations or the communities from the South as well. So this traveling and knowing, get to know other Indigenous people in the way how they work. It's very interesting. So next slide, please.
Thank you.
I think Jasmine.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Yes, so this is in part answering one of the questions that came in the chat, and also just to reshare, if we haven't gotten to your question just yet, we have a lot of time during the Q&A, so we will get to them. There is up to 207,000 Canadian dollars available for projects, the project component in Canada, so for the co-leads in Canada, to be used across the 12 to 24 months, however long you decide your project is going to be. The partner from the South has their own budget that they can apply for. So you will use we ask you to kindly use the budget template, and within the budget template that's linked in our on our web pages, both Save the Children and BCAFNs as well. When you access this PowerPoint, you should be able to click on the hyperlink as well. When you use the budget template, you'll see that there are two components. There's a sheet specifically for the budget coming from the partner in Canada, and a sheet for the budget for the partner in the South. And so that's where you'll list your different budget categories. There are budget categories there for you to plug in within the sheet for the South. Because everything has to be presented in Canadian dollars, there's an automatic coding that when you input what currency you're using, it should allow for the conversion. So please use that budget template. And we do have a very comprehensive financial guidance document, again, linked on our web pages, along with the application guide. It's separate than the application guide. It's a document of itself, where there's a lot of guidance and explanations and definitions as to what we're looking for, providing examples even of how to fill in the different sections of the budget. And one of the things to note is that there's an allowance for overhead compensation for 9.5% rather. And so this is calculated on top of your project budget. So if you are applying for, in the North in Canada, 190,000 Canadian dollars, I cannot do quick math, but whatever 9.5% of 190,000 is, you would include that on top of your budget and reflect that in the budget sheet. Similarly, this is done for the partner's budget in the South as well. A question we have received via emails, so maybe something some of you might be thinking about as well, is remuneration. We do have a recommended maximum of 30% for remuneration. There can be flexibility within that if you absolutely need it. So we are open to that flexibility. The recommended maximum is 30% for remuneration. And within remuneration, consultants can be included within that budget category of remuneration. So the 30% can include a consultant or consultant fees as well. So yes, please use the budget template. Refer to our financial guidance document. We don't have finance colleagues with us on today, but if you do have any additional questions, we'll try to address them, and any that we cannot, we will get back to you about. But again, please do refer to those documents that we've made available. Hopefully they are comprehensive enough to support you and answer any questions you might have. Next slide, please. All right, Alina, I believe.
Yes. All right, so we just want to conclude this webinar with some important details. So everyone that's present in this call today might be at different stages in their proposal process. So some of you might just be starting, some of you might have already filled out the Google form and are just waiting for the assessment. So we recommend for people that are starting out to please fill out the eligibility self-assessment. Andrea has provided it in the chat below. And if you are eligible, it will lead you to the Google form that you also must fill out so that we can start the matchmaking process. If you are a group that has already filled out this form and are just waiting, we thank you for your patience. We are just filtering through the list and contacting you with your eligibility. And if you have any questions, please just email BCRIP. I also have my email that I will provide in the chat below, as well as Patricia's. You can also contact us for any questions. And all of the documents can be found on our website. So the application guide, the frequently asked questions, everything that you will need to prepare your proposal. And next slide, please. And yeah, we want to thank you so much for being here today and bringing your interests and curiosities into this project. We want to open it up now for questions, and we will try to address all of your questions as best as possible. Next slide, please. Yeah, feel free to unmute when you have a question or also drop it in the chat.
A couple of questions in the chat, I believe that we can go back to perhaps. One on the concept note, as well as one on the eligibility of grassroots organizations, Indigenous grassroots organizations in BC. So perhaps maybe we can quickly skim over the concept note. It's not as relevant to the applicants from Canada. However, as mentioned, if you have already an identified partner from the South, it is very much relevant to them. So perhaps I can pass it to my colleague, Andrea, to provide you with a quick overview of what that is, how that works, what the expectations are there.
Perfect. Thank you, Jasmine. So the concept note, it's a Google Forms that is exclusively for the South, since they have one step because they have different actions. They have to implement projects in the regions. So it's mostly 4 questions that they have to answer related to what are their proposal, what is the scope of their project, and what is the sensor knowledge they want to share. It's not relevant for the North, since they don't have to implement the project, but we are going to share a list with this information for you to know what are the topics of interest from the South partners.
Can I ask a quick question in that sense? It is related to the fiscal sponsor, the demonstration of the capacity of managing funds if the organization in the South is going to apply with a fiscal sponsor. That point needs to be shown by the fiscal sponsor and not by the Indigenous, in our case, Indigenous Women Federation. Is that correct?
Sorry, happy to jump in there. I lost my mouse for a second. So if you're applying under the fiscal sponsor, then it's, yes, the responsibility of the fiscal sponsor to demonstrate that financial management capacity, the experience there. So within the application template, within the narrative component, we have questions and a checklist that tries to gain a better understanding of that. And specifically, if you're applying under a fiscal sponsor, we do ask, what is your relationship? And to tell us a bit more about that fiscal sponsor as well. If there has been an oversight in terms of you feel there isn't a question that fairly or sufficiently assesses the fiscal sponsor's capacity, I do encourage you to, within one of the boxes, tell us about that capacity if you find yourselves needing to write more. So yes, it would be if you're applying under a fiscal sponsor, we look at their ability to manage, because they would be the ones who sign the contract and would be under that legal responsibility. Does that answer your question?
Excellent, thank you.
Wonderful.
Hello.
Hi there. Sorry, I can't see. I'll just remove the spotlight from myself. Go ahead, please. Sorry.
Hello.
Hi there.
Yeah, it's regarding the same question about the fiscal sponsor. The fiscal sponsor is going to be, or it, I mean, the fiscal sponsor can be an NGO who works with indigenous communities in the South, or it's a type of different organization. That's one question. And the second question is, we sent an interest of expressions letter, and we're not sure if we are going to classify to the matching process right after April 20. So that's the second question. You're going to make with the little form I fill, and then you're going to match us with some indigenous community and or indigenous people in the north, and I mean in Canada. Thank you.
Thank you. So on that, I understand you might be joining us from the south, not from BC. Is that correct to assume?
Yeah, from
Okay.
Bolivia. Sorry,
Okay.
I was nervous. Now I can speak better now.
No worries. So about the fiscal sponsor, this would be the case for both in Canada and in Latin America. It can be an NGO. Indigenous organizations are preferred to be a fiscal sponsor. But to answer your question, it has to be an organization that has that registration, who can act as the legal responsibility bearer and be the signatory of the agreements. We do also have some colleagues from the South joining us, so it's great that they are here. And perhaps I can either pass it to Andrea, maybe to talk a bit more about that matching process, but and to answer the other components, any relevant components. But in some, we wouldn't match you essentially, but we would facilitate the process. So if you are eligible and if you are pre-selected within that list of pre-selected prospective applicants, then we facilitate the matching with an organization from, or a group or a nation from Canada. Andrea or Mayra, Anna, does anyone have anything to add there perhaps?
Well, I think you explained it perfectly, Jasmine. We will be facilitating a matchmaking webinar in the case the allies don't have a partner. But this part of the process, it will be the step 4. First, you need to make your self-assessment, and then you submit your concept note, and after that we will be making a list for the eligible partners, and then we will invite you if your organization passes all these steps.
Thank you, Andrea. And don't hesitate to, again, send us an email to the BCRIP email. And if you have a partner in the South, or if you are joining us from the South right now, please fill in that Google form. That'll assess your eligibility. If you are eligible, then you'll be redirected to a short concept note, which will act as the pre-screening step. So that is the process for the concept note and eligibility. And there is a question from Carlos as well about how we would know other organizations, First Nations from Canada. So similarly, if you are eligible, if you're pre-selected, then we'll facilitate the relationship building process. We'll host a matching webinar, create space for you to get to know one another, of course, with an interpreter present as well during that matching webinar, for example. So hopefully that clarifies things about the concept notes and questions from the South.
Jasmine, I would like to clarify something, and I think Andrea already mentioned this, but just to be clear, because we have some folks from the South and some from the North, the process is different for the South than for the North. So the concept note is only for the South. So, and also, you know, the steps are different as well. So in the North, the nation interested, or the organization interested in presenting or submitting a proposal needs to go to the eligibility form that is for the North, that's in English. And once we confirm, or you confirm your eligibility, you will be directed to another form that is different for the North and is different for the South. So in the North is a more simple form that is asking you questions about what is the ideas that you have for this project, what are the potential sharing topics that you will be including in the proposal. Also some information about the nation, some information about the organization. And in the South, we have the concept note. The concept note has more information. It's a different form that wants to kind of bring your information about the nature-based solution project that you will be undertaking in the South. So that's why it is different. Concept note has must be submitted today before midnight. And it's only for the South. You don't need to have a partner in the North to submit a concept note. In the North, you don't need a partner to submit that form that we have for the North. We will have this matching process after April 20. If you are already connected with somebody in the South, that's good, but the organization in the South must also take the eligibility or self-assessment eligibility form because it's important. We don't want like any partner in the North or in the South to be out of the the process just because your partner is knowledgeable. So you have to be very careful with the eligibility. If you have some, if you are not sure, please send us an email and we will help you to go through. Yeah, and also there is a question about grassroots, if they can submit an application, and if that it has to be through the band systems. So as I presented today at the beginning of the this presentation, BCFN is responding to the mandate that we received from Chiefs Assembly, and we prefer if those applications comes through not only the band systems, but also hereditary systems and all other governance systems that you may have in the nation. The goal of this call is to support directly to Indigenous people and First Nations, grassroots organizations that are connected to the territory. They're working on the territory. Some of them may be working with a band. They are also welcome to participate, but we need to assess eligibility criteria. We need to assess eligibility based on the criteria that we have and see how connected it is with the territory and how connected it is with a community, and directly also working with some of those systems that the nation may have. So I don't know if that's response to your question, Chell. I think that's, if you want to speak to that, please mute yourself. And
yeah, for example, hi everybody, I'm Ricardo. I'm here representing the working group on Indigenous Food Sovereignty. That's the organization, and it's created and led by Secwepemc leader Dawn Morrison, and she's been doing this work for almost 20 years, and is often guided by Council of Grandmothers. So I'm wondering if that kind of a group that's working for food sovereignty within her own nation and connecting with other nations, if that would qualify as well.
Yeah, if you're connecting, the world is connected with other nations. I think if you provide more information about that, we can assess this specific case, because the idea is like the proponents need to be connected with the nation, need to be connected with the territory directly. We don't want intermediaries in this proposal, but we also want to support those ones that are working on the ground, those ones are connected with the band. Also, like, we want to support building capacity in the nation itself. So if you could provide more information, that would be great, and please send us an email.
Thank you.
Through the chat to see if we're trying to answer the questions in the chat as well as they come up. If there are any that have been missed, don't hesitate to flag them to us. And if there are any questions that you would like to ask verbally, feel free to raise your hand and we'll call you up to unmute yourselves. Oh, hi, yes, Yes, go ahead, please. Thank you.
I just wanted to find out if you have any kind of youth groups or people that are like some of the youth groups involved in this kind of a project, because I think just thinking of our community and some of the like building like resource management plans and things like that, it's kind of something that we're involved in, but I'm not sure if there are other communities also that have youth groups that would be involved in this.
What would you say?
Albertina, like, the project wants to support youth and women, as we presented. It's very important for this project to bring youth to be part of the the projects in within the nations and the partnership projects. We don't have a specific youth in the overarching project, like we have a youth representation, or at least young people as part of the Indigenous Steering Group. But the idea with the BCRIP project is to support youth. So if you have any ideas how to do it through the partnership projects, I think those are the ones that we are hoping to receive. So proposals with youth integration, women integration will be, of course, have more points, if I can call points, but will be assessed as well. Yeah, this kind of youth is part of the criteria of selection in this project, in this call.
Hello.
You're unmuted. Yes, go ahead.
Patricia was telling that we need to send a concept note today. Is it right? Where do we find? Can you post I don't know, the form to fill the concept note and send it?
Sure.
And
Yes.
and where to send it also? It would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Andrea, if you'd like to jump in, please do. Andre put it in the chat. So first you have to complete the eligibility assessment, which is just a short assessment to see if you're eligible. If you are eligible, it automatically redirects you to from the south to the concept note form. That's an online submission. So once you complete it, it automatically goes in. So you don't have to separately email it somewhere. So that information is posted on our web pages, but also Andrea, maybe if you could post it in the chat once more. And
Thank you.
yes, absolutely.
Thank you. And I'm really sorry. I think I'm missing this.
That's okay. We understand that this is a complicated, complex project for us as well. It is very much a learning process, especially operating as a funder isn't something that we have done either. So it is very much a learning process, and it's very exciting, but it does come with its challenges. So we do appreciate everyone's patience as you navigate this complex process with us, and we're working to make it as clear as possible. However, there may still be some questions or clarities. If that is the case, don't hesitate to continue to reach out to us. We're happy to provide the clarity and the answers. So no apologies needed there. And yeah, Ashley, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. If not, do correct me. But there is an eligibility form in Spanish and in English. So Andrea, if you could please post both the English and the Spanish one, that would be greatly appreciated. If you are an applicant or prospective applicant assessing your eligibility from Canada, please only fill in the English form. If you are coming from the South, please fill in the Spanish form, because they have been developed to refer you to, let's say, the concept note accordingly. So Andrea will post that in the chat. Please do keep an eye out. And Johan, is that correct? Please do correct me if I'm mistaken.
Yeah, hello, thank you. I just have a small questions, maybe for Alina, in order to clarify something, and it is regarding the eligibility self-assessment, because we already filled out the form, but it didn't lead us to the Google form in order to proceed with the pre-screening process. So I was wondering if that will be something that will happen in the further days, or it should be happening already. I mean, to have that Google form send it by email, or yeah, I'm a little bit confused in that part.
Yeah, thank you, Johan, for the question. So the way that form works is that if you are considered eligible, it should directly link you. If you're not finding that the form is given at the end of you completing it, it might be because you are considered non-eligible, depending on how you've been able to fill out that form. In this instance, if there are any details about your application that perhaps that form is not able to address, you can contact me or also BCRIP directly with more information. So perhaps we can directly send you the Google form. Yeah, that eligibility assessment tries to address all the points that are needed to clarify whether you are eligible or not. But as we're learning, there are some instances where we're needing to communicate directly with the applicant to just learn more about the organization. So yes, please feel free to contact us and we'll take a look at your organization that's applying, and we will send you the Google form if you are deemed eligible.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Alina.
Yeah, no worries. And I'll put the emails in the chat as well so everyone has access to it.
Alina, and just to add to that, Johan, remember that the forms are different from the north and the south. So I'm not sure if you're referring you submitted or fill out the form in Spanish, or you did it in English. So just remember that those forms are different, and please do it the one it's applicable for your interest.
Right. Yeah, it was in English for the north.
So, and there is another question for Carlos. It says in Peru that women organizations should be member of related to ONAMIAP. It doesn't have to be related to ONAMIAP. The call is open to all indigenous people in Peru, Bolivia, Colombia, and Guatemala. So it's it doesn't have to be related. Yeah. So thanks.
Okay.
Andrea.
Thank you so much. And I recognize that this is a very interesting and encouraging process. I know that it's very complex, and I really recognize that, and I thank you for all the work you are doing. And please correct me if I'm wrong. So if an indigenous organization, an indigenous-led organization, is not eligible in that, talking about the North, if an indigenous-led organization is not eligible for any reason, because it's still not that clear, right? That's something that kind of is going to be addressed internally by the organizers. So if an indigenous-led organization in the North is not eligible, I'm understanding, and correct me here if I'm wrong, that other pathways can be pursued. And it could be that individuals from that organization can do the application or be applicants following the band systems or the hereditary band systems, or any other type of indigenous self-government system. And in that way, there will be eligibility for the North. Is that correct? And if you could please expand all what you can about this topic. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. Just to clarify, individuals cannot submit an application. So it has to be First Nations. That means bands or nations or organizations that are made up from the bands themselves. Like, for example, there are tribal councils, there are nations that includes 5, 4, 6 bands. They are the organizations that can apply. Also organizations that were created by nations. It could be one nation or multiple nations with different, objectives. Like, for example, there are organizations that were created to for addressing water management, or some nations created organizations based in their economic development goals. But those are organizations that were created by one of many nations themselves, so they can also apply to this call. If we are discussing now the grassroots, people that are connected with those with their work in the territory. So what we want is organizations that are working in the territory, that they have presence in the territory, they are working with grassroots, or they are part of them. And their connections with their all governance systems. Also, those organizations that their board members, for example, are coming from the band systems or their own governance systems. It could be hereditary systems, but are coming from there. And the mandate for the organizations are also coming from the band systems. As I said before, the goal with this project is to support the First Nations themselves, like in the case of in Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, and Guatemala. We want to provide support to those indigenous that are direct working in the territory, provide direct funding to those small organizations that are usually excluded from calls like this type, but they are identified as indigenous themselves. So we don't want to go through intermediaries, and that's why we are a little bit more strict with the eligibility criteria. I hope that helps. Let me know if you need more clarification.
So it seems that what I'm understanding, the main criteria is that it needs to be the nation itself, be it through an organization that the nation created, but always the nation itself.
Yes, because we are talking about land-based rights. We are talking about, the way how the nations are working to recover their rights and the ways how they were doing things before colonization. That's why the call is supporting the indigenous people themselves. So yes, that's an answer to your question.
Thank you, Patricia and Andrea. And again, if anything does remain unclear or you'd like to talk further, we're very much open to emailing, so feel free to reach out to us. I did see Gonzalo you had your hand up, and then after Gonzalo, I would like to quickly go back to Stephen, I believe, Stephen's question, so I'll expand on that nature-based solution piece a little bit afterwards as well. But Gonzalo, listening to you.
Hi again. I realized that when you fill out the Google form in English, of course, you're not going to be to classify to the conceptual note. But if you do it in Spanish, of course, you're going to. Then I'm going to fill out the Google form in Spanish and see if I
Yes.
if I am able to have a marriage. I mean, matching with an indigenous organization at the north.
Yes,
Sorry.
yes. No,
Thank
that's
you.
okay. No, that's okay. And exactly as you said, if you are an applicant from the South, please only fill in the Spanish one. If you fill in the English one, you probably will not be eligible. Same with Canada. If you're applying from Canada, only fill in the English one. Alternatively, you won't be eligible most likely. And if you are from the South, assessing your eligibility in the Spanish form and you're eligible, then you will be referred to the concept notes. So I do wish you the best of luck and hope for your eligibility. You seem very engaged, Gonzalo. So fingers crossed, and fingers crossed for happy marriages for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay. And just kind of scrolling back up, I'm not sure if I can find the specific comment quickly enough, but there was a question about nature-based solutions and why it's implemented in the South versus the North. Patricia did expand on that, so I hope that clarifies. I do want to add a small caveat or a nuance to that answer. So even though the nature-based solutions are to be implemented in the South, it doesn't mean you have your hands fully tied in the North. Of course, you can't. We're not looking to fund any physical works or nature-based solutions in the North. However, as a part of your activities, as a part of the knowledge sharing, the learning process, if there are aspects of this nature-based solution in the South that you are wanting to explore within the North, then you can explain that in your application and you can you can have certain activities and certain budget for that as well. However, the main point is the main nature-based solution itself has to be in the South, given the portfolio of funding that this comes from and that we are restricted by as well. But I do hope that introduces some additional clarifications. And if team, anyone would like to add, please do. Otherwise, Carlos, I see you are unmuted. I'm not sure if it's intentional to ask a question or not, but yes. Carlos? Hi.
Hello?
Hi, you are unmuted, so I'm not sure if you have a question to ask.
Hello. Sorry.
Andrea, could you? That's okay.
Yes. Sorry, Patricia. I lost the communication. You know, I have a contact with some indigenous women organization in the south of Peru. I'm working there for about more than 20 years. But there is no contact with ONAMIAP in the south of Peru, in the south of Cusco. Sorry, you know, Cusco have 14 provinces. And looking at the webpage of ONAMIAP, I found that they have some people, members in the north, in the Anta province. So you will recommend us to get in contact with them just to explain who we are. Is this a requirement for this convocatory or not? Please give me some idea about this.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't understand your question in the chat. But yeah, as I said before, there is no requirement to be part of ONAMIAP to apply for this call. So it's if the women organization in Cusco, you know, they want to apply, they should check the eligibility form. They should fill out the eligibility because there are other components connected to the eligibility. Like, for example, if they have the institutional capacity to host the project, or they may want to look for a sponsor, a physical sponsor. So those are the only aspects of the eligibility. But just to answer your question, no, there is no requirement to be part of ONAMIAP to submit a proposal. So please ask your colleagues in Cusco to fill out the eligibility form in Spanish. So
yeah, Patricia, okay, please, one question more. What happens if this organization don't have a legal register yet? They are working on this, but they don't have that. Is this a problem?
Yeah, I think that's why we are bring this idea of having a physical sponsor. They can support with administration of the project, but it has to be that group of women, the ones who implement the project, who design the project, and who has, a decision on the project. So the physical sponsor, it can be an NGO or an indigenous organization that need to like they can provide support, but it's the indigenous organization the ones who has to lead the implementation of the project. In some cases in the South, small organizations similar to the one you described are partnering with other small organizations to be able to submit a proposal. So that's another option. But please keep in mind that today is the last day for the South, not for the North, but it's the last day for the South to submit a concept note. So if they are interested, they can fill out the eligibility form and a concept note. They don't have to have a fiscal sponsor yet at this stage, so they can look for a fiscal sponsor later on. But for now, we need to know more about what are the ideas, what are the potential activities that this organization will be interested to include in the proposal, those ones related to nature-based solutions from an indigenous perspective.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. Yeah, we'll do it today. In the concept note includes the proposal, so like the proposal, or the concept note is about the organization.
The concept note is about organization, but also has some information related to which activities we will be included in the proposal. The proposal is a joint proposal. Actually, it has to be developed with a partner in the North, particularly those points that are connected with knowledge sharing and joint advocacy. But a concept note is it's not that saying that a proposal is a small form that the only goal that it has is to provide further information about the idea.
Okay, thank you very much, Patricia. Thank you very much to all of you. Congratulations for supporting our people.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Carlos.
Muchas gracias.
Yeah, I see that we're just a minute past 11:30, which is our intended end time, but we are flexible. If there is one more question that wants to be answered, feel free to raise your hand or unmute. Otherwise, yes, we will be posting this recording and letting you know when it's out so you can refer to it as you need. And Yasmin, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Alina. Just quickly, Carlos, to flag the comment in the chat. So Alina did provide the link to the frequently asked questions document. Within there is specific information about legal recognition and eligibility. So you can always refer to that as well. And for anyone, that FAQ document, and you can always reach out to us as well. And yes, please do submit your concept notes and eligibility checks from the South today. It's hopefully a simple enough form that you can get done. Thank you, Alina.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so that's it for our webinar. If anyone has any questions, you can stay on for a minute. But otherwise, everyone is free to go. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that this webinar provided a little bit more clarity on the process. As Yasmin said, we are very much in the learning stage as well, as this is very new, but very exciting. So again, thank you for your patience in asking these questions and getting more clarity on the process. Yeah, we look forward to people's expressions and applications. And I hope everyone has a great day.